All right, everyone, time for a little bit of an aside on the First Amendment issues. Keeping in mind, of course, for all those that don't realize it, yes, the First Amendment constrains the government, but the concept of free speech goes a lot further and is philosophical. It's an Enlightenment era concept. It's meant that speech should be legitimately totally free. If it's not causing victimization, like, you're inciting violence or putting the fear of God in somebody or preventing someone else from speaking, shouting them down, then whatever you have to say, no matter how fantastical and weird it may be, no matter how hateful or spiteful or bad faith it may be, should be totally legal, totally acceptable, tolerated. And the idea is that people, if you're enlightened, if you have an educated society of enlightened people, they're able to have those conversations, cool heads prevail, they debate things, and then generally the good ideas win out over the bad. That's the way that's a properly functioning society. When you get to the point where you have censorship by a state, by a corporate entity, it's not a properly functioning society anymore. Society is sick. There is a corruption within the society itself on a philosophical level. It goes well beyond the legal, it goes well beyond anything more pragmatic. I wanted to ask people a question, though. Everyone can find certain things, certain ideas, belief systems, political affiliations, certainly, individuals in some cases, that offend them. What I would ask is this: who cares? Who cares if some sort of speech is offensive if it causes no further action and is not meant to? For instance, I find it offensive when people are socialists. They think that because I've become, moderately successful, I should have to pay most of my productivity to other people who aren't. And while I don't look down on the poor, because I've been dirt poor most of my life, I don't look down on people like some people on the right, which I'm not part of anyway. They're like, oh, the poor chose to be poor, they should work hard. And it's like, no, that's not really how it works. I have a little bit more mercy and care towards people who have nothing. But I don't want the government to be the one determining how to disperse that money. I think it should be done much more locally, preferably in a private sense, number one. It should be voluntary, number two. I believe most people fundamentally, if able, will be generous to some degree. And number three, it's far more efficient. Why would I want to give $1 to the government to give to a poor person? By the time it gets to the poor person, it's 10 cents. Because of all the bureaucrats and lawyers and accountants and shit that line their pockets on the way as that money slowly travels through. So I find it very offensive when people suggest that, or when people talk about white privilege. I find that offensive because it's not real. They're trying to say like somebody like me, born in the lowest echelon of society, somehow has some magical privilege that made me successful and that it didn't have to do with my own effort, my own initiative. I find that offensive. But who fucking cares? They should be able to say that too, and I can debate them. And the wonderful thing about the internet is it's a great equalizer. It's a public platform anybody with any weird view can participate on. And so we can all have these endless debates, and I find that awesome. I find it great. I like to be able to talk to people that I disagree with and get into a heated exchange with them. Though the one problem with it is, of course, now you've got a situation where if the exchange is too heated, you get deplatformed. So it's a throttling of that natural discourse that should be taking place within any enlightened, good society. Any society, any government which distrusts its people in speaking their mind, I think that government shouldn't be trusted. Why don't we apply the same logic to corporate powers? And by the way, why are there people that are so dumb that they think that a private corporation can actually be benevolent and even-handed in how it applies such rules anyway? Hell, they could barely follow through with their TOS 10 years ago when the idea of censorship at large on the internet was spurned by all of the big tech firms. They sounded like a bunch of libertarians back then, including, to Jack Dorsey and Pichai and all of these others. They sounded basically like ANCAPs at the time, when these sites weren't yet monopolies, of course. Now that they're at the top, they don't want the competition, I guess. It's all related to money. But who gives a fuck? Why should I care if someone says something hateful? And by the way, who makes the determination about that being hateful anyway? Something that was said 50 years ago that was considered objectively true then might seem hateful now. I guarantee you that there are common opinions that are held by people right now, just general, regular, milquetoast liberal Americans that will be considered deeply offensive 50, 60 years from now. It's impossible, by the way, to judge what trajectory society will go in. It could become far more far left, like what we would consider stereotypically leftist in its thought. It could go and become more like traditionalistic. You could see a revival of maybe paleoconservatism. You could see a libertarian upswelling that reverts society to having more in common with maybe the Enlightenment era, classically liberal values. I think, by the way, that would bring about the biggest golden age this world has ever seen. If you fused modern technology with the true classically liberal constitutionalist ideals of the early United States, its first 50 so years of existence, my goodness, it would be like living in paradise. Yeah, I could die happy. Say, well, at least for a while, things are all above board and peachy keen. Unfortunately, it looks like we're entering another Gilded Age instead, which means then we're going to have to enter another progressive era. We need another Theodore Roosevelt. At least if you're going to have a progressive president who's going to be kind of like, you know, workers' rights and stuff, at least make him like really athletic and like just a total man's man. Like Teddy Roosevelt got shot and then finished his speech. Okay? Give me a president like that. Because so far the closest thing we have is Trump. And he's not exactly Teddy Roosevelt's physique, if you know what I'm saying. I think if he got malaria, he wouldn't linger on for very long before he would keel over, in all honesty. But who cares if speech is offensive? It's just words. It's just words expressing an idea. The only people that truly care, or that pretend to care, are people who feel threatened by it. And so what they do is they label whatever they don't want to have to debate as offensive so that they can try to delegitimize the argument by default and simply shut down debate to begin with. That's basically what it boils down to. That's why for-profit corporations, in partnership with for-profit multinational media entities, in partnership with moral busybodies, right now are trying to censor everything. Because they all have an axe to grind. They all have something to gain from it. The only people that don't gain are the 99% of us who, if you're not a pundit or a politician, or you're in a staffer in the legacy media or someone associated with it, and you're not like working for a Silicon Valley giant, then you have nothing to gain by any form of censorship on the internet or in any other realm. Absolutely nothing. You're not being kept safer by it. Think of my children. Yeah, if you think of the children, you want your children to be able to speak freely. They're even trying to shut them down now at this point on some platforms. That's about all. Peace out.